How do you turn tragedy into beauty? It's a question artists have struggled with for as long as there's been art. And it seems that Evanescence's Amy Lee knows the answer. Evanescence's somber song Hello, taken off the 2003 album Fallen, features lyrics that reference playground school bells, rain clouds, and a child who isn't breathing. It isn't too difficult to figure out that the song is about losing someone close to you, perhaps even a child. For Amy Lee, the story behind Hello remains tragic and deeply personal. At the age of just 6, she lost her 3-year-old sister. In a 2004 interview with Blender, Lee chose not to disclose the illness her sister died from, but she revealed how medical professionals at the time struggled to make sense of it all. The event left a defining mark on her that changed the course of her life. She said, "When that happened, my whole perception of life changed. It sounds stupid, but that was when I became an artist. The music is my attempt to heal myself. Things like that can destroy you, or you can get through it."
It just put me on a path to open my mind to, oh, that can happen. Well, what does that mean? How does that work then? Like, what am I?
In 2023, Lee spoke to Kerrang about each track from Fallen, which included looking back at Hello and what it means to her. Again, Lee expressed how important the song was to her healing process and how it connected with others who experienced loss. She pointed out that, while it might have been too difficult for her to perform the song live when it was first released, she's ready to do so now. In January 2018, 36-year-old Amy Lee lost another sibling, her younger brother Robbie, who had severe epilepsy and died at the age of 24. However, Robbie's death wasn't easier to deal with just because Lee was an adult, as she explained to Kerrang. In that interview, Lee explained how the deaths of both her siblings affected her. She pointed out that they stirred up different emotions and feelings because they occurred during 2 specific periods in her life. Lee said, "The first time I was 6, so the processing was very different. That was more about fear. This time it was more about love and pain. The perspective is very valuable, but I'd rather not have it. I'd rather he be here more than anything." Much like the tragedy of her sister's death found its way into Lee's lyrics for Evanescence's Fallen, so too did Robbie's passing for the 2021 album The Bitter Truth. According to Robbie Lee's obituary, he shared a passion for music like his sister and proclaimed his love for one of the most important rock bands of the 1960s, the Beatles. Robbie played a number of musical instruments too, and even provided additional vocals for a cover of Hello Goodbye on his sister's 2016 children's album, Dream Too Much. When Evanescence appeared in the music scene, nu metal stood out as one of metal's popular subgenres. Sadly, though, it also had something of a misogyny problem. Bands like Limp Bizkit built empires singing about Nookie and featuring scantily clad female dancers in their music videos. This wasn't anything new, of course, as the music industry was still stuck in the prehistoric age with its attitude toward women and how they were presented. It was predominantly a case of sex sells, and even female musicians like Amy Lee had to deal with this. Despite Lee's operatic voice being a distinctive trait of Evanescence, the group's first label, Wind Up Records, wanted a male singer to rap on the band's songs. Lee wasn't thrilled with the idea, eventually compromising and accepting 12 Stone's Paul McCoy as a guest vocalist on Bring Me to Life. However, as she explained to the 45, "That was really hard for me because I had to start out with our first song feeling like I made a sacrifice on my art."
You know, when you are going to have your first song out the gate have like a guest vocalist on it and have something that's a departure from your sound, that's scary.
Lee admitted she didn't speak up often enough because women were painted as difficult if they did. She didn't feel as if the press helped either, as they helped give weight to the idea that a female-fronted rock band was little more than a gimmick. Consequently, Lee didn't feel as if she was receiving the same level of respect as her male contemporaries, which, unfortunately, is hardly a rare problem for women in music. Some rockers party way too hard to deal with their problems. Amy Lee, however, has always treated music as both a remedy and outlet. Speaking to Odyssey, Lee revealed how she experienced both anxiety and depression from a young age. However, she found the best way to deal with it was through creativity. She explained, "The way that I am able to self-soothe and create my own therapy is through the catharsis of creation. Whether it's making music, making food, or painting something, creation makes me feel good." Lee pointed out that even though trauma often shapes her music, these issues often manifest into an end result that she considers beautiful. In an interview with Spin, Lee revealed that her family moved around because of her father's radio career, which would see him moving stations regularly. When she was 13, they settled in Arkansas. She instantly felt like an outsider among her peers who had known each other since childhood, and all chose conformity over individualism. She remembered, "I was the only one who dressed really weird. I had these green boots and this blossom hat and all of these stupid accessories. At my old school, that was cool, but at this school, everyone was wearing the same thing: Banana Republic shirts and Birkenstocks and socks." Lee added that she stuck to herself and often spent time at school drawing in her sketchbook. One day, she came back to her desk and discovered her sketchbook's pages were all ripped out. When she asked someone what happened, they told her that another girl tore it up because she didn't like how Lee dressed. Despite being bullied for her fashion sense, Lee refused to succumb to the pressure. In fact, she still designs her own clothes to wear on stage. The beginnings of Evanescence can be traced back to when Amy Lee and Ben Moody met at a camp and bonded over their mutual love of music as teenagers. Reportedly, they even dated for a short while. The pair co-wrote the band's first album, Fallen, and the world anticipated what they would do next after such a dazzling debut. They wouldn't find out, though, as Moody departed the band halfway through a tour in October 2003. Lee spoke to VH1 in 2006 about the arrival of Moody's replacement, Terry Balsamo.
I think it's all for good. It's all evolving. I think it's better than it ever has been.
The split was far from harmonious, as Lee is reported to have told Evanescence's former band manager, Dennis Ryder, about Moody's alleged physical and verbal abuse of her. Speaking to Spin, she also accused Moody of being all about the drama and a really unhappy person. Additionally, she said the band was in a better place immediately after he left, even claiming to have photos of everyone's happiness on the day in which he officially announced he was done. In a separate interview with Blender, Lee said, "I don't hate Ben, I just don't ever want to speak to him again. He was truly kind of poisonous. Some people just aren't good for you. It doesn't mean they're Satan, but you can't have them in your life." Moody remained more cagey about the split. He told MTV in 2005 that he wished Evanescence well and insisted that his departure was the best for everyone involved. If Evanescence's Fallen feels raw and personal, that's because it is. In an interview with Spin in 2006, Amy Lee admitted that the bulk of the album was inspired by an abusive relationship she was in for 3 years, especially the single Going Under. While Lee found the music to be cathartic to what she was experiencing at the time, she also discovered that it served as a stark reminder of how she should have left the person sooner than she did. She said, "After I recorded those songs, I was listening to my own words on Going Under. I was thinking to myself, you know what you need to do and you're not doing it." Despite this relationship being a major theme in the writing of Fallen, there was another track inspired by a certain someone who, to paraphrase the song, brought Lee back to life. In the years after the song's release, Lee admitted that Bring Me to Life was written about her husband, Josh Hartzler, who was a friend back then. Hartzler had seen through her facade at the time, when Lee was still convincing herself that everything was okay in her abusive relationship. By no means is Evanescence one of the rock bands with the worst drama, but they went through the ringer after their rise to fame. And the success of Fallen in 2003 was dampened by member departures and the firing of their then manager, Dennis Ryder, in November 2005. A month later, Ryder sued Amy Lee for breach of contract, demanding $10 million in restitution. Lee then filed her own bombshell lawsuit against Ryder, claiming a long list of offenses. Lee alleged that Ryder had spent his time chasing extramarital affairs instead of focusing on her and the band's career. In addition, she claimed that Ryder used her credit card for his own personal expenses, including buying a car for his mistress and purchasing hotel stays for romantic meetups. However, the most shocking allegation was that of sexual misconduct. Lee claimed multiple instances in which Ryder had made unwanted sexual advances toward her. Through his attorney, Ryder denied the allegations, claiming it was through the manager's efforts that Evanescence became global superstars, and he only ever behaved in a professional manner around Lee. Many rock stars grow to loathe fame. because of the demanding followers who refused to give them a moment's peace from being a celebrity.
Come on, lads, come on!
And while many mega fans are harmless, if a little annoying, there is a darker, more sinister side of fandom that every musician hopes to never encounter: stalkers. As Evanescence exploded to mega superstardom in the early 2000s, Amy Lee encountered her share of overzealous fans crossing personal boundaries and getting much too close for comfort. In 2006, she told VH1, "I went through some weird experiences with stalkers. It's weird how it works. My lyrics are so intimate that people feel like they really know me, and I don't know them at all. My privacy had been completely invaded, and there were a couple of nights where I couldn't stay at my house." Much like the other tragedies in her life, Lee took this traumatic experience and channeled it into her art. The haunting song Snow White Queen, which is featured on Evanescence's second album, The Open Door, is inspired by what she went through at that time. The track features a dual approach as the lyrics showcase Lee's fear and violation of privacy, as well as what she imagined her stalker to be thinking as they watched her. Worlds collided when Seether frontman Sean Morgan collaborated with Amy Lee, who was his then-girlfriend, on Broken. The ballad was inspired by the breakdown of Morgan's marriage after his wife chose to stay in South Africa rather than move with him to the United States in the early 2000s. As Morgan told Psychology Today, this event affected him as he felt insecure and alone in a new country, eventually turning to alcohol and drugs as coping mechanisms. Ultimately, this resulted in other self-destructive behaviors, including cheating on partners. While neither Morgan nor Lee confirmed infidelity was the cause of their eventual breakup, fans found out their relationship was over after Lee admitted the single "Call Me When You're Sober" was written about Morgan. The lyrics left no room for interpretation of what she felt was the issue. Lee also addressed the relationship in a 2006 interview with Blender, stating, "It was good for a while, but it ended really, really wrong. It's just that fatal thing. Girls are so attracted to ass." Morgan went to rehab in 2006, but he wasn't pleased about the song. He later told MTV, "In any relationship, I don't think it's right to say and do those things when people break up. And she obviously felt the need to go out there and make me sound like a complete ass. What can I do? I just refuse to lower myself to that level."